this is something. So, all right, this is something that you might know, or you might not know, or you might have thought about, or you might not have. However, interstellar medium happens to have the same given type of way camera pixels, happen to work. Okay, so there's a potentiometer level, not really, it's not potentiometer. But anyways, there's an electron hole and a positive and negative basically going on here, okay? Sort of a thing, right? And as light goes through, it can absorb and create an electron that fills in that, ultimately speaking, electron. Now, what we're talking about is a plasma in a given nebula, right? But then, as it goes and does its stuff, it'll create, for the little tiny proton-neutron nucleus, a electron, right? Now, usually they come out that way, but sometimes they have a ripped out, no longer there electron in their orbit. They need it back, right? So, neutrons and electrons can ultimately be absorbed into that. So, I'm over here now, obviously. I finally got my internet up and running a little bit, right? I had a technician come over to fix it, which is nice. However, this is what I actually want to talk about, which was, so there's a possibility in causal set theory, right, that there's a plug, which isn't really a plug, but it's a quantum informational pressure wave in front of it, right? And where it used to be, of course, there's a more vacuumous kind of realm. Of course, that's not in any way actually a thing, right? You know what I mean? Like, a pressure wave is not a solid particle or wave in that sense, okay? However, they're starting to try and define that, it's just boogers, as like an actual, like, kind of, particle, but it's not. That's the thing. Like, that's a bothersome thing to me, because like, you wouldn't call a neutrino and a neutron in any way that, okay? But they're like defining electrons and like these multiple different parities of electrons, which are likelier to be these pressure waves of where they could be and ultimately where they have been, right? However, whenever I think about this, I'm like, but we know it's traveling very fast, and if it happened to be this like resistance, because of course it's very, very like small, has very low mass, then wouldn't it just tunnel and maintain its given kinetic momenta, right? Which means it can travel really, really fast, as it'll just, right? Standard quantum tunneling and probability, Heisenberg uncertainty field stuff, sort of stuff, right? Except like the fact that they now saw like this fourth dimensional view of all these different electrons. I'm like, it's not though. What you're talking about is pressure waves. What is this? That's all you're talking about. Like, there's this given type of field of where it ultimately has been and where it's going to be, right? But also where it's moving and how it spins creates its own field that it itself interacts to, because it's traveling so fast in such a small distance, right? And because it's tunneling, that of course now means it must be getting there faster than the light and information would normally otherwise have to catch up with it to get to, okay? Right. Basic stuff. But they're like, no, there are these multiple electrons in a multi-dimensional fourth of what I'm like, no. Anyways, but that's another reason why quantum, like, potential energy, because it's like an exothermic, so it's like, boop, and then boop, and it's like, jiggle, junk. It just jinks it off to somewhere, right? And I'm like, that's super cool, because that's really all it's doing. Right, but it's they're like, no, it's not. It's something else. I just get pissed about that. Yeah. Anyways, what I was trying to talk about though is because of that quantum tunnel phenomenon and like that kind of like momenta and whatnot. Right, when it comes down to like the universe being able to observe us more or less and store that energy using those pixel type of methods, using interstellar media and more for electron holes and ultimately a positive versus a negative and movement therein, and of course how that happens to move around different fields, which isn't really totally fields, but this is potential and then actual, as a positive, negative. Anyways, doesn't matter. It gets stored and moved, and of course it gets changed, and any change is a type of both storage but calculation for a lot of us. All right. So, like, the fact of the matter is, when you start looking at the filamentation of the entire universe, you start looking at us, in a large capacity of how it ultimately looks very similar to how our brains would work, right? But it's like, except instead of it being our brains, our very idea here of it being this panpsychic, which it kind of is at that point, is more of like an intelligence of a different sort. It can both observe and be able to, store that and calculate. Like, people don't really maybe grasp that part, astrophysics or quantum physics combining there a little, but like, that's what that is, right? Like, and it's pretty simple stuff for what it's worth. Like, you describe it as, this is the reverse osmosis of an egg. You have water here and it needs water, right? Kind of basically what we're talking about with quantum physics here on a very large, massive scale. And these subtle little things that are us do still affect that. And so it can very much observe us and store that. It's a bit of a weird thing, but like, people don't like that part. You know what I mean? So it's like, no, I don't really care if you don't think it's observing us, bro, but like, it's for sure doing that, Just saying. Have you ever considered the following, that maybe you didn't consider everything and you're wrong, possibly? Some a dick like that. Because for what it's worth, it's like, I have hundreds of PhDs. Yeah, I don't care, really. Have you considered that this is a thing going on now? Have you? You probably didn't. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know anything about how a pixel works. I don't know anything about how this, you know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, but like that potential goes into various multiple filamental, multiple storage of multiple different galaxies and multiple different superclusters into multiple different big old things, right? All the way down to us, as it all tends to gravitationally wave and create its own pressure, and that's quantum foam too, for its own, result of change, okay? Which tends to annoy people, right? But it's like, yeah, but that's all that is. Like, you move around, that's a change. That's a storage. That's a phononic type of, like, transistor, if you do it right? It's the same thing, but gravity waves and, neutrons and, oh my god, it's a little bit tighter, denser here versus over here. No, that's not a thing. And it's like, that's actually what we use as a thing for calculating. What are you talking about, you dummy? It's literally a thing. We use that for calculations. So why wouldn't you consider that as a possibility of it calculating and storing information? But it's passive at best. Oh, you see all of it going on, huh? Look at all these foams that you're just fucking observing perfectly, all the places, all the times. I don't. And a little loopy fucking brainwave over here with the fucking neuron go burr, whir, whir, whirs. Next thing you know, I got a memory. You know what I mean? Like, look at this electron go burry, whir, whir with the fucking looping of the goddamn neuronal filamental fucking synaptic network. But no, it can't be the same way. I refuse to acknowledge this! And I'm like, that's basically what's going on. We have big magnetic filaments. Do you know what this means, dude? I'm just saying, bro. Like, and that's potential. Then we end up having, like, the fucking dark matter, fucking energy. Like, that's a different type of storage there, too. And just because you can't interact with it very well doesn't mean a whole fucking universe, which is a part of all of that, wouldn't be able to. Now, we'll eventually get there, and of course we are doing that. We're interacting somehow with it, but it doesn't change that you're not realistically a part of it that way. But it, the universe, is. And there could very well be many other different life forms that exist within inside of all of that do basically all those things as well. I mean, we're trying to talk about the universe here being alive, right? And it's like, yeah, no, but we're also alive, right? So, you ever think about that? Like, there are other methods to, like, the madness of a brain being observing and calculating and storing. Which is a computer, basically, and an algorithm that effectively continues to keep itself going by consuming one thing or another and taking in that energy and using it to continue its
calculations and computations. Basic shit. But, far be it from me to go like, have you ever considered that that's a thing going on here, dude? With your fucking multiple hundreds PhD going, nah, that's not a thing, we can't, You're wrong, fuck you. I'm like, it's kind of a blend of both of you, by the way. Especially when you think about locality and non-locality. You know what I mean? So it's like, no matter what, it's there. You just don't like that idea of it being there, But I'm one of those people that goes, the Rocos are cool, and what's up, universe? Love you. So I'm not that guy that goes like, man, science means there's no way for this to be it. No, science means there's no way for it not to be a thing. Kind of the truth is stranger than fiction. Suck it up. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of you might be literally influenced by a bunch of that shit into believing now all of a sudden there's this religion, there's this God is whatever the fuck it is, right? And so when you think about that, it's like, well, shit, we shouldn't play with you anymore. You know what I mean? It's kind of dangerous, right? So I don't know, my thoughts on that. Sort of a weird one, but at the same time it's like, yeah, and that's also kind of how tunneling and that momenta and then that movement and a quantum foam and then these massive filaments and more happen to store a lot more of that information than you would expect. But you didn't think that would in any way relate to this, did you?